"Turn that truck around. This road belongs to Ridgeview Estates now." That was what HOA President Diane Whitmore told me, while two security guards stretched a steel chain across the only road leading to my house. Behind her stood a brand new sign. Ridgeview Residents Only. The concrete around the posts was still wet. The problem was, Diane was standing on land my grandfather had owned since 1981. The gravel beneath her expensive boots belonged to me too. When I told her that, she laughed. Then she warned me that the sheriff was already on his way to arrest me for trespassing on my own road. What Diane did not know was that I had my family's original deed and a 43-year-old access agreement inside a leather folder in my truck. The certified county survey was still on file, and I knew exactly what it showed. That agreement had temporarily allowed construction vehicles to use my road. It had never transferred ownership to the developer. It had never granted permanent access to the HOA. And it certainly had not given Diane the authority to lock me out. I did not yell. I did not touch the chain. I photographed the lock, called the county recorder, and later sent one email to the company that had insured every property title in Ridgeview Estates. By sunrise, all 86 luxury homes had no verified legal access. And Diane was calling me, begging me to sign the same document she had spent months trying to force on me. I pulled my truck onto the shoulder and shut off the engine. Diane stood in the middle of the gravel road beside her white Lexus. She wore dark sunglasses and held a blue HOA folder tightly against her chest. Two men in black Ridgeview security jackets guarded the chain as if they were protecting a crime scene. One of them pointed toward the highway. "You need to leave, sir." I stepped out slowly and kept both hands where they could see them. "My house is half a mile down that road." Diane smiled without moving. "Not anymore. The board has designated this as controlled community access. Your vehicle has also been reported as a safety concern." I looked past her at the new sign. Fresh concrete surrounded both posts. Tire tracks from the installation truck were still visible in the soft shoulder. I had spent 31 years designing county roads, reviewing easements, and marking property boundaries. I knew exactly where Ridgeview ended and where my land began. So instead of arguing, I opened the camera on my phone. I photographed the chain, the padlock, the sign, the security company logo, and Diane's Lexus. Then I walked several feet along the drainage ditch and photographed a rusted survey marker beside an old iron ring. My grandfather had installed that ring when he built the road. Diane tapped her folder impatiently. "The sheriff will explain this more clearly." Faint sirens drifted in from the highway. I crouched beside the marker and zoomed in. Stamped into the metal were 4 characters Diane had apparently never noticed. 17B, the chain, the sign, Diane's Lexus, and both security guards were standing entirely inside my parcel. That road existed long before Ridgeview Estates. My grandfather, Walter Mercer, built it in 1981 with a rented bulldozer, a borrowed grader, and help from 3 neighboring farmers. It connected our farmhouse to the county highway and followed the eastern edge of parcel 17B. Every summer, my father and I filled the potholes by hand. We cleared fallen branches after storms and added fresh gravel whenever the spring rain washed out the shoulders. After my father died, maintaining the road became one of the promises I kept for him. The land west of us was sold to a developer in the late 80s. During the first stage of construction, my grandfather allowed their trucks to use our road because the developer had not yet completed its own county entrance. But my grandfather was careful. The permission was written into a temporary access agreement. Construction vehicles could cross the property during the building phase. Any permanent residential access after construction required written approval from the landowner or the landowner's legal successor. The original project failed before that approval was ever requested. Years later, Another company bought the unfinished development and turned it into Ridgeview Estates. Families began using our road to reach their homes. My father never stopped them. Neither did I. They were homeowners trying to reach the houses they had paid for. I saw no reason to punish them for paperwork they probably knew nothing about. Diane mistook that courtesy for surrender. 3 months before she installed the chain, she mailed me a permanent easement agreement and ordered me to sign it within 10 days. The agreement would have transferred control of the road to the HOA. It would also have allowed Ridgeview to install gates, cameras, signs, and security patrols anywhere along the route. I placed the unsigned document in my leather folder. Then I sent Diane a letter asking her to identify the recorded easement she claimed the HOA already possessed. She never answered the question. Instead, she began manufacturing authority. Her first violation notice looked official enough to fool anyone who did not read it carefully. It carried the Ridgeview Estates logo, a red final notice stamp, and a demand that I remove my private road sign within 7 days. According to Diane, the sign violated community standards. I was not a member of her community. The next letter claimed my work truck damaged property values. Then came a demand for a gate key, followed by a $500 fine for obstructing what Diane called shared residential access. I returned every notice with the same sentence. Please provide the recorded document giving Ridgeview Estates authority over parcel 17B. Diane never provided one. Instead, she installed speed limit signs, 2 security cameras, and a Ridgeview patrol route along my road. At the next HOA meeting, she described me as a hostile outsider who could shut off emergency access without warning. One resident recorded the meeting and sent me the video. Diane stood behind a podium and told the board that years of public use had transformed the road into community property. That was not how property law worked, but she said it with enough confidence that several board members believed her. Then she proposed what she called a final solution. The HOA would chain the entrance, take control of access, and force me to sign the permanent easement. I replayed her final sentence 3 times. Once the road is chained, Mercer will have no choice but to sign. That was the moment I stopped treating her letters like ordinary neighborhood harassment. I created a timeline. I copied every envelope. I downloaded the meeting video. I saved the invoices for the signs, the cameras, and the private security patrol. Diane thought she was building authority. What she was actually building was evidence. Sheriff Elena Ruiz arrived with 1 deputy and parked behind my truck. Diane walked toward her before the cruiser door had fully opened. "That man is trespassing," she said, pointing at me. "He has been threatening residents and interfering with our private entrance." Ruiz looked at the chain. Then she looked at the road behind it. "Who owns the road?" "The HOA controls it," Diane replied. That wasn't my question. Diane opened her blue folder and handed Ruiz a glossy neighborhood map. It showed Ridgeview Estates in pale green, with my road labeled Community Access Drive. Ruiz studied it for several seconds. There was no county recording stamp, no parcel number, no certified surveyor's seal. Diane kept talking. She said I had become aggressive after the HOA asked me to follow basic safety rules. She claimed my truck frightened residents, and that I had threatened to close the development's only entrance. I let her finish. Then Ruiz turned to me. "Do you have proof this road belongs to you?" "I have the family deed and the old access agreement. The recorded survey is at the county office." Diane folded her arms. "He's stalling." I pointed toward the map in Ruiz's hand. "Ask her for the easement's county recording number." Ruiz looked back at Diane. "What is it?" Diane began searching through her folder. She moved faster with every page. She did not have one. Ruiz returned the map. "This document does not establish ownership. Until I review the recorded property documents, I'm treating this as a civil dispute. Diane immediately objected, but Ruiz raised one hand. She warned Diane not to touch my truck and told both sides not to escalate the situation. Then she handed me her card. Bring me the deed and a certified copy of the recorded survey. If the road is yours, this conversation changes. The county records office closed in 47 minutes. I got back into my truck and started driving. I reached the records office 12 minutes before closing. Marcus Hale, the county surveyor, had worked with me on road projects for nearly 20 years. When I placed Diane's map on his desk, he studied it without saying a word. Then he opened the official parcel database. The boundary line appeared in solid black. My road, the drainage ditch, the iron ring, and the location where Diane had installed her sign all sat inside parcel 17B, my parcel. Marcus retrieved the recorded deed, the 1981 survey, and the temporary access agreement my grandfather had signed with the first developer. The agreement was only 3 pages long. The sentence that mattered appeared near the bottom of page 2. Any continued use following the construction period shall require the written consent of the landowner or the landowner's legal successor. I was the legal successor. There was no consent from me. There was no consent from my father. Marcus searched the county index for a permanent easement connected to Ridgeview Estates. Nothing appeared. Then I showed him the glossy map Diane had given the sheriff. Marcus enlarged the lower corner. The document displayed an easement number, but the number belonged to a drainage agreement recorded on the opposite side of the county. The property line had also been shifted nearly 20 feet east, placing my road inside the development. Marcus leaned closer to the surveyor's seal. "That isn't an original stamp," he said. "Someone copied it." Diane's signature appeared beneath the altered map beside the words, HOA Authorized Representative. Marcus printed certified copies of the real deed and survey. Then he placed Diane's map in a separate evidence sleeve. "This isn't a simple boundary mistake, Caleb." He tapped the false easement number. "Someone created legal access on paper for 86 houses, and every one of those houses had been sold as if that access were real." Marcus scanned the certified deed, the original survey, and the 1981 agreement before the office closed. From the parking lot, I wrote one email. I sent it to Ridgeview's title company, the county recorder, the developer's attorney, Sheriff Ruiz, the fire marshal, and the HOA's insurance carrier. I did not demand money. I did not threaten to close the road. I simply stated that Ridgeview Estates had installed a locked chain on property it did not own, while claiming access through an easement that did not appear anywhere in the county records. I attached the deed, the certified survey, photographs of the chain, Diane's altered map, and the recording of her saying the lock would force me to sign. The first reply came 23 minutes later. The title company opened an emergency access review. Then the developer's attorney ordered Diane to remove the chain and stop representing the road as HOA property. The fire marshal requested proof that emergency vehicles had a permanent legal right to cross parcel 17B. By 9 that evening, 3 pending home closings had been suspended. 2 refinancing applications had been placed on hold. The HOA's insurance carrier warned that intentional trespass and document alteration might fall outside its coverage. Diane's chain had physically blocked everyone for several hours. But even after it was ordered open, a larger problem remained. Banks and title companies do not treat legal access as a handshake or a neighborly favor. A home must have verified ingress and egress. Without recorded access rights, a lender cannot be certain that the owner will always have the legal ability to reach the property. Diane had tried to turn my courtesy into ownership. Instead, her chain forced every professional involved to examine the paperwork she had avoided for years. My phone remained silent until 5:42 the next morning. Then Diane called. She called again. And again. By the 17th call, she finally left a voicemail. Her voice no longer sounded confident. "Caleb, we need you to sign the easement before the banks open. This is affecting innocent families." For the first time, Diane was admitting that the road required my signature. By 7 that morning, every homeowner in Ridgeview had received some version of the same warning. Legal access to the property is currently under review. One family was supposed to close on house number 83 that afternoon. Their lender canceled the appointment. A moving truck waited near the development, while the buyer's attorney searched for a recorded easement that did not exist. Another resident, Nora Bell, had planned to sell her home and move closer to her daughter. Her buyer's bank suspended the loan before breakfast. Diane responded with a community-wide email. She claimed I had deliberately shut down the road and was holding 86 families hostage for money. Nora drove to the entrance and found me standing beside Sheriff Ruiz. "He didn't shut anything down," she told Diane. "You put the lock there." That sentence changed the mood. Residents began pulling out the documents they had received when they purchased their homes. Some deeds mentioned a permanent easement but listed no recording number. Others described access only as the roadway currently in use. Several title packages referred to different maps. None of them included a certified permanent agreement signed by my family. Diane sent another email, insisting that the HOA possessed proof. Attached was the glossy survey she had shown the sheriff. The altered one. Within minutes, every homeowner had a copy. Nora forwarded it directly to the county recorder with one simple question. "Can you confirm that this survey and seal are authentic?" The response arrived before noon. The county had no record of the map. The easement number belonged to an unrelated drainage agreement, and the surveyor whose seal appeared at the bottom had retired 9 years before the document was supposedly created. For years, Diane had controlled the story by keeping homeowners separated. Now, all 86 families were looking at the same evidence. The title company's investigation uncovered the reason Diane had become so desperate. Ridgeview Estates was preparing to announce Phase 2. The expansion would include 40 additional luxury homes, a private clubhouse, a swimming pool, and a second gated section behind the existing development. The project was worth millions. But the county would not approve it without permanent, recorded access to the highway. The developer had another possible entrance on the northern boundary, but building it required a bridge, extensive drainage work, and nearly $2 million in construction costs. Using my road was much cheaper. All they needed was my signature. Emails obtained from the HOA showed that Diane had promised the developer she could secure the easement before the final approval hearing. In return, Ridgeview would receive a new clubhouse, additional landscaping funds, and management authority over the expanded neighborhood. Then the financial records revealed something worse. The security company that installed the chain belonged to Diane's brother-in-law. HOA dues had paid for the guards, the signs, the cameras, and the legal letters used to pressure me. The residents had unknowingly financed an attempt to take control of private property. But one email damaged Diane more than everything else. It had been sent by the developer's attorney 4 months earlier. "Do not advertise or represent Mercer Road as permanent access until Mr. Mercer signs a recorded easement." Diane had replied with 4 words. "Leave Mercer to me." She knew the development did not have permanent access. She knew my signature was required. And she had still told buyers, lenders, and 86 families that the road belonged to the HOA. Sheriff Ruiz scheduled an emergency meeting at the Ridgeview Clubhouse. The county recorder, the fire marshal, the title company's attorney, Marcus, and nearly every homeowner planned to attend. Diane announced that she would prove I was the person threatening the community. She still believed the right speech could defeat the documents. The Ridgeview clubhouse was standing room only when I arrived. Diane sat at the center of the board table beneath a banner that read, "Protecting Our Community." She opened the meeting by accusing me of extortion. She said I had waited until families depended on the road and then used an ancient technicality to threaten their homes and property values. I did not interrupt her. Neither did Sheriff Ruiz. We let Diane repeat every claim while residents recorded her on their phones. When she finally stopped, Marcus connected his laptop to the projector. The certified county survey appeared on the wall. A thick black line outlined parcel 17B. The road, the entrance sign, the cameras, and the location of the chain were all inside my property. The county recorder stood next. "There is no permanent access easement recorded for Ridgeview Estates," she said. "The number appearing on the HOA map belongs to an unrelated drainage document." She enlarged the copied surveyor's seal. This seal was not legally issued for that map. The room went silent. The title company's attorney explained that all 86 homes had been sold with access descriptions that were not supported by county records. Then I opened my leather folder. I placed my family's original deed on the table. Beside it, I laid the 1981 agreement, Diane's unsigned easement demand, photographs of the chain, security invoices, and the developer's warning email. Finally, I played the recording from the HOA meeting. Diane's voice filled the clubhouse. "Once the road is chained, Mercer will have no choice but to sign." Nora stood in the second row. "You used our dues to lock the real owner out of his own road." Several board members immediately called for a vote. Diane was removed as president by 6 votes to 1. Sheriff Ruiz then informed her that the chain installation was being investigated as unlawful obstruction and criminal trespass. The altered map had also been referred for possible document fraud. We walked outside together. Under the sheriff's supervision, Diane's brother-in-law removed the same padlock his company had installed. The steel chain dropped into the gravel. Workers pulled out the Ridgeview Residents Only sign. In its place, I installed one of my own. Private road. Access by recorded agreement only. Cars could move again. But before anyone celebrated, the title company's attorney asked the question everyone had been avoiding. Would I grant permanent access to the 86 homes, or would I make Ridgeview build another entrance? I could have refused. Legally, Ridgeview would have been forced to build the northern entrance at its own expense. The project would have taken months, and every homeowner would have remained trapped in uncertainty. But the people in those houses had not forged a map. They had not used HOA money to pressure me. They had not chained me out of my own property. Diane had. So I offered the residents a new agreement. The existing 86 homes would receive permanent recorded access to Mercer Road. Emergency vehicles, delivery trucks, and homeowners could use it without interruption. But the conditions were clear. The HOA would never own or control the road. No chain, gate, camera, patrol, or sign could be installed without my written permission. The proposed Phase 2 development was excluded completely. If the developer wanted access for 40 more houses, it would have to negotiate a separate agreement or build the expensive northern entrance. The HOA would pay for road maintenance, reimburse my survey and legal costs, repair the damaged shoulder, and disclose every contract connected to Diane and her family. Nora read the agreement twice before signing as acting board president. Within a week, it was recorded with the county. The suspended closings resumed. The title problems were corrected. Every resident received a copy of the real access agreement. Diane's clubhouse expansion disappeared from the development plans. Her security contract was canceled, and the investigation into the altered map continued without the HOA protecting her. At the entrance, I installed a smaller sign beneath the private road notice. Walter Mercer Road. Built by hand, 1981. My grandfather's old iron ring remained beside it. Diane's chain did not. Sheriff Ruiz had taken it as evidence. The road was open again, but this time courtesy could no longer be mistaken for surrender. Diane believed authority came from a title, a clipboard, and the confidence to repeat the same claim until everyone stopped questioning it. But ownership does not work that way. A chain can block a road. A sign can frighten people. An HOA can send fines, hire guards, and call the sheriff. None of those things can rewrite a deed. The road remained mine because the records said it was mine. The 86 families kept their access because we replaced Diane's threats with a real agreement, one that protected both their homes and my property. That was the lesson Ridgeview learned. Being patient does not mean you have surrendered. Being generous does not give someone ownership. And staying calm does not mean you are powerless. Diane thought the padlock made the road hers. All it really did was force everyone to open the county records. So tell me this, would you have reopened the road for those 86 families? Or would you have made the HOA build another entrance?